Hello and welcome to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I'm Sean Hammond, Chicago Bears beat writer over at shawlocal.com. Head over there for tons and tons of draft coverage. We published so many stories this past week with the stadium stuff too. It's been a crazy week. Joining me today is my co-host Michael Dwojak. Michael, how you doing this morning?
Good. How are you doing? Beautiful spring weather. Things are actually turning around here. So I feel like the vibes are pretty good right now.
We made it through the draft. We survived the marathon week. We wound up writing about 5 draft picks for the Bears. Last time we talked, we were discussing, of course, Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze on Friday morning after night one of the draft. But that was just the beginning. Obviously, those guys are the stars. Those are going to highlight the draft picks. But we saw a couple more picks from the Bears. They got an offensive tackle who's a local guy. They got a punter from Iowa, and they got another edge rusher. Big picture, Michael. What are your sort of impressions of what they were able to do on days 2 and 3 of the draft?
I think they've been, I don't know, they added a tackle, swing tackle, whatever, wherever Kieran kind of plays into this whole thing. And then, an interesting move with the punter in the 4th round. And we can talk more about the decision making there. But then they got their the defensive, their pass rusher in the 5th round, which I think was important. Like when you saw that they, got the punter in the 4th round, I kind of felt, well, this feels like a move that a team that, is close to winning a Super Bowl or is, contending every year for a playoff spot kind of makes. Like you still have needs on this team. But I was glad to see that they got that edge rusher in the 5th round and had to, I think, only give up a 4th round pick for next year. Based on everything I've seen about him, it seems like his stock is only going to go up, and maybe it's like a buy early, you have him develop for a year and that kind of stuff. And then he turns into, more of a, someone who's going to be able to do things moving forward after a year or two. But I do think that, it's a top heavy class. I think Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze are going to be your headliners. Kieran might take a year or two. The punter's obviously, a punter. And then obviously the pass rusher might take a year or two too. So, I think it's a top heavy class. I think you've got some good depth pieces moving forward. Overall, I feel like it was a pretty good draft class for Ryan Poles.
The punter is a punter. That is true. Torrey Taylor is the punter out of Iowa. Was really good for the Hawkeyes. Lots of jokes on Twitter the other day that he was basically their offense, which was kind of true.
Not wrong.
They're not wrong. And that was a spot that they needed to get better. Unfortunately, Trenton Gill just wasn't really cutting it. You look at the punter statistics, they were pretty low in all the metrics you look at, and average yards per punt and punts inside the 20. They just weren't getting it done. And Trent Gill was a 7th round pick from Ryan Poles 2 years ago. He's still on the roster, so I'm sure they'll probably go into training camp with him on the roster. But I gotta think this is Torrey Taylor's job. When you're spending a 4th round pick, that's pretty. He was the first kicker or punter taken in this entire draft, and so that's prioritizing that spot. And you're right, it does feel kind of like a luxury. Like, are the Bears really that close that they need to be taking a punter in the 4th round? But it was a spot that they needed to improve. Karan Amagaji, hopefully I'm not butchering that, is the tackle out of Yale, and a local guy from the suburbs. He had some fun stories about, I guess his dad works at the golf course, and he heard that Matt Eberflus was there last summer and tracked him down and said, "You're going to draft me next year." And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. That is a crazy story. You love the confidence from this guy to go out there and say something like that and do that, and believe in himself enough and put himself in a position to be drafted into the NFL. That's a pretty wild story. And Michael, I know you talk to a lot of folks who have been around him growing up. What are you hearing from the local community here?
Yeah, I talked to the Hinsdale Central coaches about the move. I talked to Brian Griffin, the head coach, and McHugh, the offensive line coach for the Red Devils. And, talking with Brian, he, was, going to stay up, wanted to go to bed early on Friday, and then was like, well, let's see, who the Bears take, and then I'll go to bed. And then all of a sudden, with Kieran's name is up there, is like going crazy, like, whoa, like, how is that going to happen? And I feel like that was kind of the reaction, we kind of had in Hallis Hall on Friday when the Bears selected Kieran. I feel like it was kind of like, not that, he has the size, he has the athleticism, but it's kind of like not really on any of our radars that the Bears would be considering, him and as a local kid. But, he was going crazy. And just based on talking to the coaches, none of this really surprised them. He started playing football as an 8th grader, didn't play his freshman year. But he always had the size, he always had the athleticism, and he's, wicked smart. Like, he went to Yale and was able to pick up on everything that the coaches threw at him pretty quickly. That's how he's been able to get to this point, even though he didn't play football his entire life. And none of this is surprising to them. And they kind of, wouldn't be surprised to see Kieran, maybe face off and kind of battle with Braxton Jones for that starting left tackle's position. I know Ryan Poles talked about, maybe he's not a starter next year. Maybe he could he doesn't want to put a ceiling on Kieran or anything like that. But they said just based on the progression that they've seen in high school, what he was able to do in Yale, last year in Yale, he didn't play. He only played 4 games because of a quad injury. So I still think we're waiting to see his full potential, which is pretty crazy to say for a kid that, has really good size and really good athleticism.
Yeah, the size and athleticism is definitely there. Obviously, the smarts are there. You're not really worried about a Yale guy picking up the playbook. Right. That's going to be no problem. Both with Amagaji and with Austin Booker, the edge rusher out of Kansas, they are kind of like, high upside guys. Both. You'd be a little surprised if either of them is fighting for, in the starting lineup to start. And Ryan Poles kind of indicated that, maybe it's going to take a year or two for both those guys.
Yeah.
You have Braxton Jones at left tackle. You have Darnell Wright at right tackle. I really do think that the Bears, that Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus really like Braxton Jones and believe that he's going to keep improving. And so maybe Karan is your swing tackle next season, or a guy coming off the bench if needed when somebody inevitably goes down, as we see so often on those offensive line spots. There's going to be injuries. You need to have some depth there, and it's always good to have young players who you're working with behind the scenes. You want to get those high upside guys who maybe don't have to start right away. Austin Booker, he's another one. He only had 3 years in college. What was it? Minnesota, I think he transferred from. Yeah. I think he started at Minnesota and really hardly played his first 2 years. He transferred to Kansas then. He wasn't even a starter last year. He was coming off the bench. And so that's kind of the definition of a high upside guy. That's a guy that you see flashes of when he had his opportunities. And not to say that he didn't play well last year. He had 8 sacks coming off the bench for Kansas. But you're not maybe expecting him to go out there and start opposite Montez Sweat right away. And I think this is a position too where the Bears could still be in the market for a free agent, kind of just like they did last year, late July, early August. Maybe they can get a veteran in there on a 1-year deal to sort of bolster that edge spot. You do have DeMarcus Walker as another veteran edge rusher. But Austin Booker seems like a guy who is going to keep getting better. I think everything I read seemed to indicate that he could put a little more weight, a little more muscle on that frame and keep getting bigger and keep getting stronger. And so maybe he's a guy that a year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you're seeing make a really big impact on the game. Guys, if you're watching on Twitter, click through to the YouTube link. You can join the conversation here in the comments. We will answer some of your Bears questions here coming up. We see some friends in the comments already. Rick's got a bunch of thoughts. Mr. Shorty's in there. We will get to your thoughts and comments shortly. If you're watching on Twitter, click through. That's the best way to join the conversation. We love answering your Bears questions. Michael, you kind of said it, like this is a top heavy class. There's only 5 picks. Obviously, when you have 2 in the top 10, that's going to be the story of your draft. And so I guess we get to the end of the draft, and of course you see your grades everywhere. You see people ranking these teams. So you can kind of finally start to look ahead to the 2024 season. I know we don't have the schedule yet, but you can see what these teams are going to be, at least big picture. Do you think, are the Bears the story of the draft this year? Did they win the draft? What are your thoughts, big picture, when you look at this whole class, top to bottom?
I think they are the story of the draft, mostly because you got 2 of the top 10 players. You got what many are expecting to be your franchise quarterback, and you got someone who's going to be who many people think is, going to be an elite, wide receiver for the next, 5 or 10 years, however long he is with the organization. So I do think that, they won the draft in that sense. I've seen a lot of grades, with the Cardinals obviously had a lot of good picks. Minnesota did pretty well too. So obviously, it's always an interesting question of like, do you win the draft because you had the most picks and you got the most talent and that kind of stuff? Is it more of a quality over quantity kind of deal? Or do you win the draft because you fit, you obviously filled 2 of your franchise's biggest needs? Obviously, you have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, but, Keenan Allen is, obviously in the second half of his career. DJ Moore is in the prime of his career, but, you have someone to kind of get ready and kind of, grow with Caleb at the same time. So I think that's kind of what makes the Bears the winners in this, where they've set themselves up to be, in hopes of, going to finally be a team that can perennially make the playoffs and has a franchise quarterback and actually, can contend with everyone else in the division and in the NFC and obviously in the rest of the league. So in that sense, maybe they didn't have, we can, talk about obviously their later 3 picks, players who are going to, be helping the team consistently as much, probably not. But, I feel like you filled 2 of your major needs to moving forward. So I kind of feel like that's kind of what helps them win the draft. When you have the number 1 overall pick and you have the top quarterback of the past few years, it's kind of hard not to win the draft.
Yeah, if Caleb Williams is as good as advertised, that's all anyone's going to remember about this draft, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, if he's that good. And so certainly that's going to, that's your hope. If you're a Bears fan, your hope is that those top 2 picks are going to be Caleb's going to be throwing to Rome for a long, long time, and you're going to be set. You're going to be good. Whether, the guys around them will change, whether they keep Keenan Allen more than this 1 year or not, like you're hoping that connection can propel you for the next at least 4 to 5 years, hopefully longer than that. If these guys are as good as advertised. And the draft is so interesting because there's no one way to build your team through the draft. You can do it a number of different ways. You look at the Cardinals, they had so many picks in the top, basically the top 100, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 picks in the top 104. Obviously they were trading back a lot last year, which allowed them to pick up all these picks. Ryan Poles has done that in the past 2 drafts. They had 10 plus picks. This year with the top 2 in the top 10, I think he felt pretty comfortable with the talent he was able to add to the team. I will say I liked the trade to get back in there for Austin Booker. They gave up a future 4th round pick.
Yeah.
I was okay with that. You're going to have an extra pick with the Justin Fields trade, whether that winds up being a 4th or a 6th, whatever. That's TBD. We'll have to see where that lands exactly. But I did think that they needed to add a young edge rusher. Personally, I thought that last year, and they weren't able to do it with any of their 10 picks. And I still, even though you can, like I said, you can go out and get a veteran in late July and early August. You want to have a developmental guy back there, even if he doesn't play a ton right away. I just think that they needed to do that. I know Dominique Robinson has kind of been that, but you just haven't seen the results, and it doesn't hurt to have another swing there. And so I really like that move. I was okay with giving up the future draft capital to do that. And really, they didn't really hurt themselves too much by that trade.
No, especially obviously you want to give yourself as many chances as you can. And obviously a 4th round pick is still pretty a good chance to get one of the good players, but
it could be a punter. That could be a punter.
Obviously you could get a franchise punter there. But if you believe in this kid and you think he's going to be there and he's still around in the 5th round, like what is the harm if you're going to help yourself down the road? I would agree with that. I think, you got to get the best players you think who are going to be available. And I think that's exactly what Ryan Poles did. And, looking at the grades of this all, I mean, are you one of those people who also adds, like, do you consider Montez Sweat part of this draft class? And like, obviously all the trades that they made in exchange for those draft picks, or you're not really one of those people? And
I personally just look at the players you took when I'm sort of evaluating that. Obviously, yeah, that's true. I mean, they gave up one of their 2nd round picks is Montez Sweat, and so you'll take that any day.
Right. Like, like what you have now for the next, however long the contract is for, I forget exactly 4 or 5 years, but you have your franchise pass rusher. And you have like your future who could potentially, fill into that role or, go opposite him in a couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, it's all obviously subjective, whoever's the winner of free agency, whoever's the winner of the draft, all that kind of stuff. We won't know the answers to any of this until like 3 or 4 years from now. But it is a fun exercise to do, especially, a day after just proclaiming these teams are the winners. And that's what's going to happen moving forward. But it is interesting just to see, exactly, how much the projections have shifted of like where the Bears were looked at, ahead of the free agency, ahead of the draft, and now where they're at now, where a lot of, prognosticators and that kind of stuff are like that they're probably behind the Bengals just because how good the Bengals are with Joe Burrow and the consistency they have there. But I'd probably say that the Bears are probably like the 2nd favorite team, who didn't make the playoffs last year to make it this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be betting on the Bears to make the postseason, probably betting on the over with their win total.
Right.
Obviously it's so hard. Like at the end of the day, all rookie quarterbacks are rookie quarterbacks, and it's going to take a little time to get adjusted to the NFL game, to get used to your teammates. I know he's already starting to get his, relationship going with Rome. That's obviously really good. And, I had some rookie numbers I wanted to talk about, Michael. We can jump right in since we landed there naturally. But how good can Caleb and Rome be as rookies? I think that's the question that everybody is going to be asking. That's going to be what everyone's going to be paying attention to when we get to training camp in August, is how are those two stud rookies doing? Is Caleb looking like he's stepping right in and going to have a CJ Stroud type rookie season? Is Rome Odunze going to have a tough, it's going to be tougher at wide receiver because you got those 2 veterans. You got DJ Moore, you got Keenan Allen. It's going to be hard to feed all 3 guys unless your passing attack is vastly improved from what we've seen in the past. I got the Bears rookie records on some of this stuff up here right now. I'm going to run through a couple of these and get your thoughts, Michael. For a quarterback, completions, the rookie record is 196 from Trubisky in 2017, and passing yards was 2,193. I think those are both very attainable. How about you?
Yeah, I think those are attainable. I am curious to see what the game plan is. We talked about this last week a little bit, but what is the game plan going to be from Shane Waldron at the beginning of the season? Is he going to rely more on the run to start things off? He obviously has a really talented running back room. You would hope, obviously, you don't know how training camp is going to go, but you would hope your offensive line is healthy at the beginning of the season. So do you rely on that? And maybe, Caleb doesn't throw it as much as he normally would just to start things off, just to get, situated in the NFL. Those are the only reasons why I would probably be like, maybe he doesn't get there, but 196 and for completions and 2,193 yards. You'd hope he'd get there. I think he'll probably go over both of them. I'm actually more hesitant to say about the completions just to see how many pass attempts he does end up having his first year. But I would safely say that he'll definitely go over the passing yards, obviously, if he remains healthy.
Yeah, health is going to be the key thing there. And for reference, I know it's a new coordinator, but it's a similar style of offense. We still think that Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron are going to want to run the ball and be a run first team, so to speak. But Just for reference, Justin Fields in 13 games last year threw for 2,500 yards. And I think the Vegas number is well over 3,000, the over under for Caleb Williams. So yeah, I mean, if he's healthy, he's going to break that record, I would think. Yeah. Touchdowns as well. I'll throw this out here. I think he's going to break this record too. It's 11, but it's from Charlie O'Rourke in 1942, Michael.
Man, that just tells you how tough things have been, doesn't it? Just like when last year when you're like naming all these like randos, like random names and that kind of stuff, and this like it's just so funny just watching this franchise and what it has been offensively throughout its history.
The rookie numbers for quarterbacks in the Bears just, yeah, like it's not actually going to be that. He doesn't even have to have a CJ Stroud year. No. CJ Stroud threw for 4,000 yards. He doesn't even have to come close to that to set the Bears rookie records. I'm going to throw a couple, while we're on the quarterbacks, I'm going to throw a couple numbers out here. Rookie passing yard totals. Justin Fields was 1,870. Trubisky, I already mentioned, 2,100 about. Kyle Orton threw for 1,869. And going back to Jim McMahon, who only played 8 games his rookie season, he threw 1,501 yards. Those are kind of the best numbers when you look at Bears rookies. And so, yeah, I really think if Caleb's healthy, he's gonna challenge all those numbers.
He should. And like you compare those three or those, other rookie quarterbacks, none of them had the receiving core that Caleb is going to have. Like none of them had
absolutely not
2 all-pro wide receivers and a future, what many expect to be a future all-pro wide receiver. So the talent will be there, and you got 2 very reliable tight ends as well. So I mean, we've talked about this so many times at this point. The table is set for Caleb. It's just up to him at this point. Obviously, like we've talked about ad nauseum, he's got to be healthy. Everyone else has got to be healthy as well. But it's set up for him to succeed, and it's up to him at this point just to reach that level. Those numbers are not that. They're not impressive by any means, so it shouldn't be that hard for him to get there. And if those guys were able to get to those numbers with, I don't even remember who, Kyle Thornton or Kyle Orton or, who, Trubisky was even throwing to at that point. But you would figure you got to hit those numbers if things are going well at this point.
Yeah, you would think so. From Rome Odunze's perspective, like we kind of mentioned a moment ago, like it's going to be tougher with those 2 veterans there. You're going to have to feed all these guys. It's going to be hard. I think there's going to probably be a bit of an adjustment period for all 3 of them. DJ was the only guy. He was the guy last year, and now he's going to have to share that spotlight a little bit. But looking at the rookie records for receiving, actually the leader in receptions was Matt Forte in 2008 with 63. So you got a running back there leading your records. The rookie record for a Bears receiver was Darnell Mooney with 61 receptions. I don't know. With these 2 veterans, I think that might be tough.
Yeah, I don't think he gets to that number just based on what they have, based on what we talked about earlier about how Waldron's going to want to, run the offense to start things off. I just think it's going to take some time just for them to kind of get a it'll take time for him. It'll take time for him and Caleb to kind of build that connection even more. So, I don't think that you'll see, even with some of these other records they're going to allude to a little bit here. I think it might be tough for him just based on who else is in that room at this point.
Yeah, I think these other 2 are probably out of reach. The rookie receiving yards record, Harlan Hill had 1,124 back in 1954. He also had 12 touchdowns, which is a record tied with Mike Ditka from 1961. Those are going to be pretty tough for Rome Odunze to challenge for those same reasons that we were just saying.
Yeah, and honestly, those numbers are pretty impressive. Who was throwing it to Hill in
1954? I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm going to look it up though. The 54 Bears and see who was playing quarterback. Somebody in the comments, if you happen to know that, let me know.
Yeah, but it just seems crazy that I just don't think that he'll get to those numbers. Those numbers are actually not terrible when you're kind of looking at him, especially his rookie receiving numbers. Pretty impressive for the 1950s and 1960s when Ditka played. But it's kind of like I wouldn't see it as a knock against Rome, honestly, just based on the talent that they have in that room. And I don't think you need to do that with them. I think Rome could definitely be a player where defenders are probably double teaming DJ Moore. They might be looking at Keenan Allen as well with the double team. If, obviously maybe one of their top, secondary players. There are going to be a lot of times where Rome Odunze might be open or like be able to like, take advantage of a mismatch, and you get him for like a big, 60-yard play, 50-yard play, something like that. So I don't think the receptions will be there or anything like that, but I do think he'll be there for those sneaky plays, which I think will be fun for a lot of Bears fans.
Rick's chiming in here. George Blanda was the quarterback. He started 7 games in 54. Zeke Bretkowski started up 5. Some other dude started 1. So yeah, there's your 1954 Bears Nuggets. This might be a little bit more interesting than the rookie records. I'm going to throw out Darnell Mooney's rookie stat line because I think that this is actually like sort of an attainable goal. If Rome Odunze has a really good year, Darnell Mooney in 2020, keep in mind he was, they had Allen Robinson on that team, so he was fighting for his touches with a veteran. Obviously, he didn't have 2 like Rome's going to have, but some similarities there. Darnell Mooney, 61 receptions, 631 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think if Rome Odunze has that type of season, you're pretty happy.
Yeah, I think you're pretty happy as well. Maybe you would want a touchdown or 2 more. I don't know, what if there is a magic number of what people would be happy with if you look at the touchdown numbers. But yeah, I think you'd be really happy with that, especially, just curious to see, how, the other 2 split up the yardage and that kind of stuff. Like, is it still going to be, DJ Moore reaching 1,000 yards and maybe, Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze kind of are like close to each other? Is it kind of like where it's DJ Moore, then you have Keenan Allen, then you have Rome Odunze? I'm just curious to see, how the targets are going to look. And something else that's kind of interesting in this whole debate and conversation is, for how good Keenan Allen has been, he has, the last few years missed, 3 or 4 games throughout a season. So at that point, you need Rome Odunze to be your number 2. So that could really help us with his numbers as well. So that'll just all be an interesting thing to look at as we progress throughout the year, just to see, what is the mindset here? Do you kind of have Caleb, focus on DJ and Keenan more just because they're your vets? They'll be at the spots that, he'll throw to it when he needs to, where as opposed to maybe Rome Odunze still needs to work on getting to the spots where he needs to be at the time. I just think that whole, game plan and how they're going to divvy things up will be really interesting to see.
Yeah, and Alan brings up an interesting point here in the comments. He says, what if Caleb is more of a game manager this year and blows up in 2025? I'd throw the same thing, not the game manager part, but same concept for Rome as well. Not every star receiver is going to have a big rookie season. I was looking back at Alshon Jeffrey too. He had like 300 yards his rookie season in 2012, 24 receptions. And then in the next year was when he really blew up and became a star in this league. And yeah, maybe that's something we could see for Rome. And I think it's interesting to talk about it with Caleb because at the end of the day, Matt Eberflus is still your head football coach. He still wants to lean on that defense. He wants to not put his defense in bad situations. They brought in an offensive coordinator who runs a similar type offense to the last guy. And so, I could absolutely see it being a case where they're a little bit conservative, especially like, that first month of the season. Maybe they get a little bit conservative with Caleb and try not to ask him to do too much.
Yeah, and I think that's why that's so important when we're having these conversations, these projections, all this kind of stuff of, I know we're all juiced up right now. All the Bears fans are ready to go, going to the playoffs, winning the Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff. But you need to set realistic expectations of this is a rookie quarterback in a new coaching system. I know that they've been, feeding him the system and, teaching him throughout whatever it's been, ever since they decided that he's going to be the number 1 pick. So that's probably helped him. And he'll go through rookie camp. He'll go through mini camp. He'll go through training camp. But, it's just different in the NFL. The speed is different in the NFL. You're not playing against, guys who are going to be, selling insurance one day or anything like that. You're going against guys who are, consistently playing in the NFL and who are the best. And even the worst team in the NFL is probably better than any team in college football. So all of that will take expectations. So, in the first month, if Caleb throws more interceptions than touchdowns, I don't think that means that he's going to be a bust. And if Odunze is dropping passes, and if he's, not at the position that he needs to be, I think we all need to realize that this is still going to take some time, and you're not going to see. And if it does click right away, that's great. And Bears fans should go crazy and that kind of stuff. But I don't think we need to be going crazy right away if Caleb, Rome, even Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, if they need to kind of adjust a little bit in the first few months here. It's not a doomsday scenario if it doesn't work in the first month or even two.
And I feel like every year in the NFL, a lot of these offenses are a little rusty. Weeks 1, 2, 3. It takes a little time to get going, especially with the way training camp is. There's one fewer preseason game, although the Bears have 4 this year.
Right.
There's one fewer preseason game for most of the league, and they're not being as physical in training camp as they used to be back in the old days. I know I threw a lot of numbers at you guys, but I'm going to throw one more out here. The rookie record, I guess it's a record for interceptions, is 17. Also, Zeke Bratkowski from 1954, quite a season for the 54 Bears. I would be shocked if Caleb Williams throws 17 interceptions. I mean, I don't even think he threw that many in his entire college career.
I don't think he'll get to that number, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does throw interceptions. He's not going to get to that number, I don't think. And if he does, then maybe we do have something to be concerned about. But he won't hit that number, but he'll probably throw as an interception or two. That'll probably be like, well, what are you looking at there? What are you thinking about there? And then, obviously, I'm sure we'll hear the whole debate about what Justin Fields wouldn't do that. Or I'm really curious to see how Bears fans react as soon as we see the inevitable, bad interception, bad fumble, bad whatever, because he's a rookie quarterback. So I don't think he'll get to that number, but mistakes are going to happen, and I think fans need to just prepare for that, and especially like we mentioned earlier, just the first couple months here.
And it's interesting that Caleb has talked about styling his game after Aaron Rodgers, because I think that from that perspective, like when Aaron Rodgers was having those MVP seasons, he was taking care of the football at an elite level. And I think that's kind of what you saw from Caleb that Heisman Trophy season. I think he had 3 interceptions. I think it was like 40 plus touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Nobody's expecting that right off the bat as a rookie. Right. It's going to take a little adjustment to the NFL game and the speed of the defenders and all that stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a learning curve there. It's going to be like that with every rookie. Certainly, you look at his college tape and you sort of project that, and you can see a world in which, he's maybe only throwing a handful of interceptions in a season. And that would be great. Obviously, that would be exactly what you want from this guy. Guys, if you have any Bears questions, throw them in the comments. We're going to get to them in a second here. One last thing, Michael, though, when you look at the draft as a whole, when you look at what the Bears have done this offseason, what positions still concern you?
I mean, defensive end, like obviously I know they got their guy, in the later 5th round or whatever, but you still need someone against Montez Sweat. And someone brought this up the other day that I didn't really think about, but what happens if Montez Sweat gets injured? You don't really have a pass rush at that point. So you really need to address that. I do agree that the Bears will probably do what they did last year, closer to training camp. Maybe you got some June cuts or whatever. See who's around at that point, closer to training camp. But I think that's my biggest position, and I'm still wary about the center position. Maybe that'll get figured out. I would have liked for the Bears to, maybe fortify that position a little bit more with someone coming up through the ranks. But we'll see what happens here. Obviously, with the all the undrafted free agents who kind of came in and that kind of stuff, how they're going to play a role into all of this. Maybe you find a gem here or there that you maybe didn't expect to be around and that kind of stuff. But I think you still need a pass rusher, and I feel like you still need a center or some sort of future, just something to kind of tell you that, this is where we're heading into the future. Maybe, the guys we have right now will be here for the next year or two, but we need more consistency, I feel like, from that position as well.
Yeah, I still have questions about this starting lineup along the defensive line. Like you said, not Montez Sweat. I'm not worried about him. Although, as you mentioned, if he gets hurt,
Who's rushing? You know?
yikes,
Yeah.
which is always a risk. But it seems, at least right now, if the season started tomorrow, Javon Dexter's in the starting lineup. Um, I think that's something to be excited about. I think he finished the season really well. He was pressuring the quarterback a lot those last 9 games, something like that. I mean, I don't think his sack numbers were huge, but he was being disruptive in there, and so I would be excited if he's going to enter the season as a starter. But you could be a little apprehensive about that too, because he's not a guy with a ton of experience, and he was young as a rookie. I'm with you. Like, I think they got to add somebody at the edge rusher spot. Rick says in the comments here, Yannick or Calais Campbell. It could be Yannick Ngakoue. He's still out there. He's still a free agent, assuming he's healthy. He ended the season on IR, but I don't think it was something that would affect him going into next season. But you could bring him back, and you could probably bring him back on a 1-year deal, probably for slightly less than you paid him last year. Something like that, I could absolutely see Ryan Poles going for. I'm less concerned about center. I think you got two guys who one of them's gonna. You hope, you traded for one, you signed another. You hope one of them is going to step up and become that starting center. I just think it's got to be better than last year. And I'm kind of with you, though. I do think at some point they have to invest in I know that they drafted Doug Kramer, but so far they haven't really given him a shot in the regular season. I think you got to have a young guy back there waiting in the wings. If you're not going to draft one in the first, second, third round, at least have somebody that you think could potentially take over in the future. But obviously they didn't do that this weekend. So, this is the group that they're going forward with. I'm not hugely concerned about it just because I think it's got to be better than last year.
Yeah, you'd think it would be better than last year. You've got proven guys who've shown what they can do, and have been there before. And it just wasn't working last year with what the Bears were running out there. But it just feels like whenever you have two of one position, then you don't really have someone there. You know what I mean? Like if you have,
I hear that argument for sure.
Whatever, like it's just kind of like, well, when. Is it going to be like it just feels inconsistent to me. And that's the biggest thing that I feel like so many Bears fans saw with, Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, Jay Cutler. As far as you want to go, there really hasn't been a strong offensive line to protect their franchise quarterback. And I can see why Bears fans are concerned about, Darnell Wright, I feel like, is the only guy where everyone is like, we're 100% sure about his future. He seems 100%. Where you have like Jenkins, he seems good, but like, can he stay, healthy and that kind of stuff? Nate Davis, is he going to be able to, show up and be there in the moment? Braxton Jones is good, but is he going to be able to, be one of the better, left tackles in the whole, NFL? That's the thing why I feel like Bears fans are concerned about and kind of focus on the center position, where it's like, do you need an offensive line to protect Caleb Williams in order for him to reach his potential? And at this point, I feel like you've got a bunch of guys who show potential, but maybe it's not a line where I feel like you can put up against, many in the NFL and be like, mine's better than theirs.
Yeah, Rick in the comments says, still worried about Davis and Jenkins staying healthy all year. Right. That's kind of what you're saying here, Michael. And I certainly hear that, especially with Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins has never played a full season. And look, in the modern NFL, they're really cautious with injuries. Most linemen are probably going to miss a game or two. But yeah, ideally, you'd like to see him playing 16, 17 games a season. And they haven't seen that with Tevin. And, this is the last year of his rookie deal. So There's a lot on the line for him. And certainly that's going to be in the back of his mind all season. And he's a guy who's dealt with all kinds of, neck and back. And those are always concerning injuries, because those are such a big, to be an athlete, you need your back, you need your neck, especially doing what he's doing. I think it's fair to be slightly concerned about that because of just the history. At the same time, I mean, I think Tevin's one of the best linemen, probably your best lineman, period.
Yeah.
I hear it with Jenkins. I'm less concerned about Nate Davis. And I've heard this a lot, on the radio or on other shows I listen to, and certainly on Twitter and stuff. I mean, Nate Davis was having a tough year personally, and I think that really affected his ability to prepare for the season.
Yeah.
I'm in the complete opposite camp where I think Nate Davis could have a really, really good season because he's been able to just focus on football for the first time in a while. And yeah, injuries can always happen. He was injured for part of last year too, and that's you can't really control that. But I personally, I think Nate Davis could be in store for a really good year. There's a reason they gave him a 3-year, $30 million contract. I mean, they like this guy. I'm not concerned about him other than injury concerns, which is always a concern with all these guys. I'm not too concerned about him.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to the big grand scheme of, since we're wrapping up with, with draft coverage here, heading into this whole thing, I feel like Ryan Poles, former offensive lineman, everyone was like, he'll know how to draft linemen and he'll know how to pick, like he knows linemen. Do you feel like he does know linemen, 3 years into this, a couple of drafts into this, like, are you confident in his linemen, finding ability, or are you still kind of, wishy-washy on that?
Oh, I absolutely am. I think he and Ian Cunningham, both former linemen. I mean, that's probably one of the strengths of this front office is finding linemen. I mean, you found Braxton Jones in the 5th round. You got a starting left tackle from Southern Utah. That's incredible. That's pretty remarkable if you really think about it. Obviously, Darnell Wright, he was a much more heralded prospect, and so you expect him to be good when you take him in the 1st round. But I think they knocked that out of the park. And even guys like Jatari Carter, like I know he hasn't played a ton, he's not a starter, but he's a really good backup for you. I think a lot of the young players that they've brought in, hopefully Karana Magaji is another one this season and into the future where you feel really good about the depth that they have on the O-line. And that was towards the end of the Pace Nagy years. I mean, you just didn't feel like they had the bodies behind the starters, and even some of the starters were a little iffy. And then once guys started going down, it was just a disaster. And you can't just have 5 linemen. You have to have 8, 9 good ones. And I think that they've done a really good job of prioritizing that spot.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I'm just curious to see, I feel like we've always heard about the lineman conversation, that kind of stuff. And obviously, that's how you build in the NFL with strong lines. But I would agree with you. I think, they've done a good job of finding talent. Is just having that talent stay on the field for a consistent amount of time that I feel like will be the major difference if the Bears succeed this year.
Here's another comment from Alan. He says, still have Herbert, Swift, and Johnson combo to run it 30 times a game. Reminder, this is a defensive-minded head coach. And yeah, that's kind of what I was saying earlier too. Like I at least in terms of like Caleb hitting some of these rookie records and all that, it's still Matt Eberflus's team. The first thing they did in free agency was sign a running back for a reason. They did that within a minute of free agency starting. We saw the tweet from Schefter that DeAndre Swift was their priority, and within 20 minutes it was a done deal. So yeah, they're going to run the football. They're still going to run the football, even with probably the most exciting rookie quarterback in football next year, or at least you hope so. They're going to lean on this defense, which was really good last year. And in terms of like winning games, I can't blame them. I think that's a good approach to take.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it kind of sets, Caleb up. It doesn't set Caleb up for failure, right? Like it doesn't like put him in too many bad positions where, he has to make a play. He needs to make a play early on in his career or whatever. And he probably will make good throws. He'll probably make, some throws where you can like, okay. But I do feel like you don't want to have Caleb set up in situations where he's constantly facing 3rd and 10 or like 3rd and 12 or like even 3rd and 8. Like you want to consistently set him up where he's like, all right, here's like 2nd and for 2nd and 6, get the first down or whatever, or here's third and 2, 3 and 2, whatever. But you want to set them up for success, and I think you do that with the strong offense and a strong running game and a strong defense. And I think you'll see a lot of that in September. And I'm curious to see how upset fans will be if Caleb Williams' attempts aren't high. Like, if the Bears look like, well, they won't look like a high school team, but like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, if they look like a high school team where they like run the ball a bunch and their quarterback throws like, let's say like 10 or 12 times, are Bears fans going to be pretty mad and be like, well, we have this generational quarterback. Why are we not using him?
Yeah, this is the same coach that was only, Justin Fields was throwing like 20 times a game at times his first couple of years under Matt Eberflus. And that's certainly something that the way this team is built, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the way it goes. And so, yeah, like, that doesn't mean Caleb's not a good quarterback. That just might be the way that they want to approach this with the defense they have, with the running game that they have. As long as the team's winning, that's all that matters. And I do think that style of football is going to keep you in games. That's going to keep you close if this defense is still playing at the same level it was last year. And at the end of the day, that's all the fans are going to care about, if the team is winning games. Michael, this has been fun. Yeah. We gotta get going, but guys, we really appreciate you chiming in the comments, joining us live. This is really fun. We love doing this. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. Head over to shawlocal.com for all of our draft coverage, and we'll have more coverage from rookie minicamp next week. There's a lot more coming up here as the spring practice sessions will get underway. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Sean Hammond. He's Michael Dwojak. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast.